Hey guys, so just a quick update while I'm still waiting for some tires and a couple other things to get here for the TRX 90. Want to show you the other project I'm about to start. It's a 2004 400EX, super clean. I admittedly picked this one up a while back and actually picked up the TRX 90 thinking, oh, it would be cool to have a pair of like a father-son pair, because I'm actually going to be selling this one, I think. But it never really occurred to me to be like, oh, do the yellows match? I assumed that because it was Honda, they would match, but TRX 90 is like a mustard. It's whatever. I'll go ahead and probably still put them up as a pair, but I purchased that one to go with this one. That being said though, this 400EX is really clean, still on the stock front tires, has some weird mismatched ones in the back, but doesn't leak a drop of anything anywhere, and is bone stock other than a K&N filter in the airbox. I actually bought this one along with an 05 as well. However, the 05 is in a lot worse shape. They hit a telephone pole supposedly with the back left tire, so the axle's bent, rim's bent. It's got some sort of hit in the frame, so it'll probably need a frame later on, but I ended up picking up both. It ended up being a real good deal for me. The guy had them in a shed for I don't know how many years. Like, they were completely covered in dust. Both of them were brown. Both the 04 and the 05 are both yellow, which is kind of unusual. I think you see the red ones more. But he said they both didn't run, and I took a chance on them. But I got this one home, and I just gave it a jump, and it ended up starting right up. Idled fine. And I've had like, I want to say 400EXs, all this bug eye style. So I could definitely tell that it was down on power. So I want to go ahead and just give the whole entire bike a once over, like I'm giving the TRX 90 over there, before I put it up. Gonna go ahead and remove the plastics. This one's just got a little latch down here, and the whole rear section comes off. Plastics have an Allen key here, couple push pins, couple bolts, and they come right out. Plastic cover for the tank's got 4 push pins. The bike is undressed, and I actually came to find something funny. It's all the plastics there, but the tank cover on the underside is actually like that mustard yellow. Lo and behold, the same color. But I'm gonna take the gas tank off now. It's just a bolt here, 2 tank straps, and remove the fuel line. So now comes the airbox. It's just the bolt here, bolt on either side, clip right here, and this whole breather with the airbox should come out. Oh, and the band clamp for the boot there. Afterwards, it's just 2 bolts right here, and this top cover should come off. There is actually this little crankcase breather goes into the side of the airbox. It just pulls out. This gives us access to completely remove the carb and adjust the valves. It's way easier than trying to do it with all the plastic and everything there. And I mean, it only took 20 minutes. Just gotta loosen this band clamp right here. Just a regular Phillips head screwdriver. Get a good pull and it'll come out. Once those screws are out, this cover just comes out. Let's take this, turn, and this little pin here will slide right out, and your carb is free. Basically all you got to do is twist the carb off and the throttle cable comes right out. This carb might have been messed with before they parked it. If you move the carb, it sounds like there's a screw or something. There's a little arm that actuates the slide up here. Almost sounds like the screw came off, which might explain why it was down on power. But the accelerator pump seems to be in good shape anyway. So we'll get to taking this apart and clean it up. I also noticed something funny a little earlier. The air box is actually like full of oil. I have no idea how that could be. It looks like spent engine oil, which makes no sense. The only way that it could get into the motor was this little breather that goes into the intake tract here, but there's no oil in it or the intake on the motor. So the only real option is for them to have actually just poured oil in there, which makes no sense. It must have been a lot more that's in the airbox too, because the whole swing arm is shock linkage is covered in it. I think my suspicions were correct. If we open the choke up here, so when you turn the throttle, it turns this little butterfly on the motor side, and it actuates this rod, and that's what should actually move this butterfly here. I don't know if you can see that. Move the throttle, you can see the butterfly opening in the back, but the slide doesn't move. I'm just hoping everything's still up in there. Let's go ahead and get this top open. See what we find. Damn it. Alrighty, I am back. So I actually had to end up, 2 of these screws got stripped out. So all of these are supposed to go like hand tight. They're not supposed to be tight at all. Ended up having to take a hacksaw to it to make it a flathead screw in order to get them out. Oh, sure enough, that's the screw I was talking about. So this little rod, this pivot point moves this rod up and down, and yeah, I can see the screw back in there. So we'll go ahead and keep tearing this down. There's the washer. A little screw up there. Might put just a tiny little dab of Loctite on it when we put it back together. After a little finagling, I was able to get the screw out from back there. I'm not sure how it ended up back there unless they put it back together incorrectly. It definitely explains why this machine was way down on power. But just see if we can put it back in there and see if it works otherwise. Good, it's not stripped anyway. But see, butterfly's actuating. So is the slide there. Awesome. Go ahead and crack this bolt. I went ahead and just used a impact driver to loosen up all the bolts on the float bowl, as well as the accelerator pump cover here, and the little bracket for the idle adjustment. Of course, all of them were just completely murdered down. Again, all of this stuff should just be hand tight. Move this guy here. Want to hold this down because there is a spring back there. There we go. So keep this off to the side. Spring. And remove the, see if we can remove, there we go. And diaphragm. Put that off to the side. Take off the idle adjustment. So it's a little surprising. Looks like it was maybe cleaned at one point and they didn't put it together properly maybe. Might replace this gasket because it looks like they tried to use like some gray RTV. Luckily that wasn't super tight. It's really easy to strip that brass. Little pin. Don't lose this guy here. The needle looks a little grooved. I'll have to see if once it cleans up. It's been a while since I saw one of these carburetors, so I'm not sure if this is the original. So this little guide fell out. Make sure you don't lose that guy. I was just remembering that the air fuel mixture screw has a D-shaped bit on the OEM carbs. And this one, that or they used the carb kit maybe that came with a updated one. But this guy's just got a flat head, so there is actually a spring washer and a little O-ring at the end there, so make sure you don't lose that. There you go. Lose this little rubber seal. Goes in here. Let's put this off to the side. There's another little rubber seal that goes in this crevice here. Had to grab a tiny little screwdriver. There we go. Put these off to the side. So should be able to just spray down every single little passage. Okay, so we've got all our clean parts lined up here. Important thing to note is to clean out shoot some carb cleaner into these little holes here. It'll clear passages that are in the accelerator pump as well as in here as well, because they do have passages into the float bowl. Let's go ahead and start putting it together. There is a little guide pin that goes right here. The part that is recessed deeper is what's going to go in first. Go ahead and slide that one in. And gonna wanna actually tighten down this little lock nut on here. Not very much. Okay. The fuel mixture screw, I looked at the stock spec and it's supposed to be 2.5 turns out, I think. This was almost 4 turns out. Run it until it seats. That's slightly seated. So we'll go half, 1, half, 2, 2.5. Alrighty, what's next? Go ahead and the needle was good after all. It is not grooved and it's still springy on the little rubber end there. It was just some crap that accumulated on there, but it's in pretty good shape, so I'm just going to go ahead and reuse it. Actually, most of what's in this carb was. So just go ahead and guide the needle in there. And we've got the pin. Push that in, make sure it's secure. And this little guy here, actually line up this little notch there. The float bowl gasket was actually in good shape. It looks like they might have just put RTV there to hold it in place, so I'm going to reuse it. If it does end up leaking, I'll just go ahead and use the one that I have from my little spare carburetor kit. Put the float bolts in. And again, these are not supposed to be super tight at all. Basically just hand tight. So once you run them all the way down, just make sure, give them a little snug. Do the accelerator pump next. These 2 little ears on here line up with these guys. So just like so. And on this little end is tighter than this bigger end that has to kind of stay stuck at the bottom of the needle. Otherwise, if you put it the other way, it just kind of ends up getting stuck. Might actually be better to, there's a little recess in there. Stick the end with the larger opening in there. Let's see there. There we go. And that did it. That's how it's supposed to go. Next up, need to put the spring on the accelerator pump. It's got a little groove there, so it fits in right there. You want to go ahead and line up the again, 2 holes there, 2 holes on there. Press it down and run the bolts in. Want to make sure that it seats nicely. I forgot exactly what this is, but there's 2 O-rings. The larger goes on the little nipple there, and the smaller goes in the recess. Just push it in there. Line her up. the cap on here. Just snug it up. And just before I close up the top here, I'm gonna go ahead and just take that bolt out and put a dab of Loctite on it. And that's what the finished product should look like. Install the carburetor cable and put it back on the bike. Carburetor is back on the bike. Ended up replacing one of these lines here. It was just dry cracked. Put the throttle cable on. Make sure that you have a little bit of play in your throttle cable, and you do hear the slide come back down and disengage. So next up, I'm going to be taking care of the valves. There's a lot of dust and stuff that accumulates up here, so I'm going to take a minute just to blow everything off around the valves, in the spark plug holder, because I can see that there's actually a bunch of crud in there, as well as just all these crevices around the starter and stuff. You can tell there's a lot of stuff that accumulates in there and around the fins. The cleaner it is, the better. You don't want any dirt and crap falling in there. Okay, now that everything's relatively clean, at least all the loose dust is out of there, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the spark plug and remove these inspection plugs so we can begin inspecting the valves. This is a 10mm and a 6mm hex, Allen key, whatever you want to call it. The 400EX does have an automatic decompression lever, so I don't think it's going to be a problem on this one. But removing the spark plug does help, because when you're going to be timing, there's a little notch you want to align, and a lot of times if there's a little too much compression in the cylinder, it can make it go back just a little bit or go forward, so it's not exactly in time, and you want it to be right on the mark. And we're going to be replacing the spark plug anyway. Alrighty, so we've got the spark plug removed, the valve tappet covers, the 24mm I believe, and the inspection plugs here. I did notice when I took these out that a lot of oil came out. There is some oil supposed to come out of it because the stator is submerged in oil, but I'm talking about, there was like, I don't know, seems like half a quart or something ridiculous. I've done a couple of these and it's never been that much. While I was looking at that, I actually noticed that the breather that goes into the air box had kind of settled in a downward position, so there was a little bit of oil in there. So I think that this motor was actually significantly overfilled. It is a dry sump system, so a lot of the oil's stored in that canister over there. The correct way to actually check the oil on these is to actually start them up, let them run for a couple minutes, get warmed up, and then you let it sit for 30 seconds, a minute, whatever, and then you check the oil. If you just check the oil without warming it up, it's going to show that it's really low. So I think that's what ended up happening and why there was so much oil in the air box. I think they just didn't know how to check the oil, so every time they checked the oil and didn't warm up the bike, they just thought that it was low. Anyways, that's a 17mm. You want to turn that clockwise. There's a little notch right there on the case. You want to line it up with the notch on the flywheel. But there's one with an F and a T. You want to line it up with the notch that has a T on it. I'll go ahead and do that and then show you guys what it looks like. The motor is timed up. If you look closely, you can see the little line there with the T. That needs to line up with this little mark here on the case. There is a chance that you can get that T lined up with that mark and you are not in top dead center. If that's the case, you just need to keep spinning until you get the T again. The way that you verify that you are at top dead center is to grab these little valves, and you should be able to jiggle them. None of them should feel like they have any pressure on them. It's just going to be a little minute amount of up and down play, as well as if you shine a light down the spark plug holder, you should be able to see the top of the piston. If you verify those things, then you are at top dead center and you can adjust the valves. They do have a different spec. The intake are going to be 0.004 inches or 0.10 millimeters, and the exhaust is 0.005 inches or 0.13 millimeters. Okay, so in order to adjust the valve, you need two tools. You need a 10 millimeter to loosen this lock nut here, and a flat blade screwdriver to go in that little slot. What you'll do is you'll loosen this little lock nut and loosen this little tappet here. The feeler gauge slides in between the tappet and the rocker arm there, just like so. Tighten it up so that there's just a tiny little bit of drag on it, but not to where it's hard to pull the feeler gauge back and forth. You want it to be touching but not be hung up by it, if that makes sense. Once you're certain that the gap is to the specification that you're adjusting it to, you want to use the flat blade screwdriver to hold this in place while you use the 10 millimeter closed end of your wrench to tighten this up. Afterwards, you want to get the feeler gauge out and make sure you can still slide it back and forth, just to verify that your tappet didn't move at all when you were tightening it. Okay, everything's adjusted to spec. Replace the inspection caps for the valves, as well as the ones for the timing. Also put in a brand new spark plug. The OEM, it's a NGK DPR 8Z. Spec calls for 0.024 to 0.028. The old spark plug was at 0.026, kind of in the middle of the range, and it looked pretty good. The electrode was nice light brown color, which is what you want it to be, so I went ahead and put it at the same gap, and hopefully that works out. Put in a new battery and put on the front plastics temporarily. Make sure it's in neutral. Just gonna install the gas tank loosener and we'll see if she starts. Okay, so we've got fuel hooked up temporarily. Try choking it. Neutral. Take it off choke. Oh, gotta turn on the gas maybe. Give it a second. So I gave it a second to warm up, but it looks like everything's good. No valve noise anymore. Idle's fine. Obviously it probably run a little better with the airbox there, but awesome. See if it'll restart. I think that's a win. I'm gonna go ahead and end the video there. Got a bunch of other things I need to do, but fuel petcock is leaking a bit. I have one of those on order, as well as a couple other things, so stay tuned.